Hey, everybody. Welcome. I hit go live and didn't bother to look up to see whether we had begun going live. So that's really a professional way to go about this. How's everybody doing out there? Hope you're doing well. Today is going to be the day when I do a little ripping apart of the mainstream media, a little ripping apart of our politicians, a little ripping apart of the FBI. There'll be a lot of ripping. There'll be a lot of ripping going on today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of this. Also, in the second half of today's live stream, I will be answering questions, talking about comments that are left at leecamp.net by my leecamp.net members. Now, you all can keep watching that, so it's not. I'm not taking the content away from you, but yeah. So those comments will be coming from leecamp.net, and if you join up over there, you get my new book, Dangerous Ideas, for free. For right now, it's just an ebook, but I hope you will enjoy it nonetheless. So join up at leecamp.net. Anyway, let's begin with, this is NBC News, Meet the Press. I'm going to play a little bit of this, go through a few topics if we have time, and show you what it is they're not saying. It's interesting how good they are at making it seem like they care about the things that average Americans care about. They care about the things that are really pressing issues to a lot of Americans. And at the same time, they're doing a really, really great job of putting forward Copaganda, which is a wonderful term for cop propaganda, pro-cop propaganda. But beyond that, we'll get into some other topics other than just cops that Meet the Press, NBC News, your standard neoliberal garbage puts forward. You know, the stuff they pump out of their face holes. Which, if you're gonna get paid $1 million to be on TV and pump out of your face holes, then I want good stuff pumped out of your face holes. I don't care who's doing the pumping, who's doing the face holes. I just want it to be good, accurate stuff. Come on. All right, so this is from Meet the Press.
Welcome back. More than 3 years after the murder.
Which, by the way, Chuck Todd has just been fired from. I think he is still hosting some part-time for a few more months. But anyway, they're clearly trying to phase him out. And he has already told everyone that he's been let go, which is amazing that he lasted that long with, he was doing the bidding of the corporate state. So I'm sure they were happy with him. I don't know. But anyway.
Murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, the Department of Justice today announced that the city of Minneapolis and its police department had engaged in a pattern of excessive force and racial discrimination that violated citizens' civil rights.
Now, first of all, not even just talking about Meet the Press and their garbage, but just our Justice Department. So this is the result that the average American wanted from the Justice Department. Yeah, there are some people who are like, hey, fucking cops should just murder people. Awesome. But most of America wanted to see some kind of ramifications for the horrific killing of George Floyd caught on camera. Most people want to see something. So our Justice Department, our government gets to go, look, we did it. We did it. We have held them accountable for the murder of George Floyd and all the other brutal things that the Minnesota Police Department does. Aren't we awesome? But if you do it 2 years, is it 2? It's more than 2, isn't it? Is it 3? I don't know. If you do it years after the fucking event, then most people have forgotten about it. Most people have moved on. It's honestly by design. It's like it can't possibly take this long to look into the brutality of that police department. But they intentionally have it go years so that the anger has died down. There won't be riots in the street. I mean, if they gave this ruling or the opposite, if they said, oh, yeah, there's a pattern of brutality in the police department, if they said that, which is what they said, or if they'd given the opposite, oh, no, there's no brutality in the police department. If they'd done either of those within a month of the George Floyd protest, within 2 months, there probably would have been renewed protests, renewed anger. People would have gone, oh, shit, it's either they're denying it or it's real. But you put it off for a couple of years. No one really cares. You get a couple of reports from the mainstream media like this going, tisk, tisk, police brutality in this one city, in this one event, right?
Findings are the result of a multi-year investigation into that department's practices. Attorney General Merrick Garland spoke on the findings today in Minneapolis.
we found that MPD and the city of Minneapolis engages in a pattern or practice of using excessive force, unlawfully discriminating against Black and Native American people in enforcement activities.
What? Hold on. You mean there's a city in America that you studied for multiple years and you found out that there's police brutality and discrimination? My God, man. Now, of course, this is the case throughout America. This is the case in most cities. I'd be shocked if you could find a city that didn't have even an inch of discrimination in their arrest procedures, their questioning procedures, who they're choosing to pull over. The odds that there's a single city in the United, we have 20,000 cities in the United States, a single city. I mean, maybe one of them with like 5 people. And they were like, well, we have 5 people. None of them are Black, but Jethro has brown hair, so we kind of discriminate against him a little bit. There's basically not a city in the United States that doesn't have at least a little. Now, there's some where it's far worse and far better, comparatively, shades of gray in our police brutality, shades of brown, actually, in our police brutality and discrimination. But it is egregious throughout the land. I mean, let's just remind everyone, we are the #1 prison state in the world. And in fact, the largest the world has ever seen. Not once. Not in ancient Rome, not in ancient China, not in ancient Greece, did they ever have this number of people locked up. Now, granted, there are more people on the world, on the face of our pale blue dot, but still, the world has never seen a prison state like this. There are far more Black people locked up in American prisons right now than there were slaves at the peak of slavery in American culture, in the American country. So it is a disgusting system. We are the largest prison state, both per capita and per sheer number. And yet we do a report like this, or the Justice Department does a report like this and says, this city, Minneapolis, has it wrong. They have police brutality. They have discrimination in that city, not throughout America, not throughout every city. So I haven't even gotten to how NBC News sucks, but there's so many things that suck. It's tough I'm trying. I'm doing my best to get through it all. But this is just how our Justice Department sucks, how our government sucks, how our policing system sucks. Our policing system originated with slave patrols and has gone like in that trajectory ever since. Anyway, let's keep going.
Data showed, for example, that MPD stopped Black and Native American people nearly 6 times more often than white people in situations that did not result in arrest or citation.
So, I just jumped around, I think. But anyway, so they're saying this report showed 6 times as many stops for Black and Native American people than white people, which maybe not 6 times, but multiple times as many is common for most cities across the United States. And of course, it is worse in cities that have a larger number of Black and brown people generally. But so you have that, but then he makes a very important caveat there where he says, in instances where no arrest ended up taking place. So the reason they add that on there is they're saying, look, these people had done nothing wrong. There was no reason to arrest them. But I would argue that even in the cases where they make an arrest, half the time it's like they find a dumb reason to pull them over. Oh, you were driving a little erratic. I thought I smelled weed, even though you were driving by me at 60 miles an hour. I just couldn't get a whiff of it. Whatever reason they came up with to pull them over. And then if they don't find the thing they were looking for, they don't see weed, they don't see other drugs, they don't see, I don't know, a gun sticking out of the guy's pants. Whatever it is, they don't find the thing. They come up with some other reason. You know, sometimes they arrest them for resisting arrest, which if you're just arresting me for resisting arrest, then why were you arresting me? Well, that doesn't matter. You were resisting arrest. Yeah, but that means you were in the process of arresting me. For me to resist something, it had to be taking place. And if it was taking place, then what was it for? It was for resisting arrest. Oh, I was being arrested for resisting arrest when I resisted arrest. What? Anyway, let's keep going. Although I think I jumped to the wrong spot.
Their shares of the population.
We are joined by NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster and Ryan Riley. Ryan, first, let's get to some of the DOJ headlines here. We just heard from the Attorney General detailing the pattern of discrimination against Black and Native American communities there. Let's be clear, it's not unique to that community, but that's where the focus was today. What were the big takeaways?
I mean, look at these. Using excessive force. Yeah, that's just Minneapolis. Discriminating against Black and Native American people. Yeah, that's just Minneapolis. Violating rights of people. Yeah, and they're engaged in free speech. Yeah, that's just Minneapolis. This is all of America. Every goddamn city. This is the way our policing works. It's the way it was designed. Systemic, not one city. But they put out these reports to make other Americans in other cities think, what's going on where you are is fine. It's just Minneapolis. There's a problem in Minneapolis.
In terms of the findings from the DOJ?
Sadly, it's a pattern that we've seen in a lot of these investigations in other cities as well, where, patterns of racial discrimination, as well as really deep issues within the systems of holding people accountable. Some of those.
So he says something that is absolutely accurate. He says, we've seen this actually in a lot of cities, and we need, there's a flaw in the system. But then they don't actually dig into the system. At no point, they love to throw these things out there that make people think, oh, they're doing right. They're addressing the problem. This guy's even saying maybe it's kind of systemic in many cities. He puts that little thing in there. Okay, pause right there. Everyone at that table, all three of them, but we probably should have more there. It takes a lot of NBC correspondents and contributors to make one brain. So really there should be 17, 18 people there. But pause right there and talk about the fucking system. Talk about how it ended up this way. Talk about why it works this way. Talk about the fact that the drug war is a completely illegal human rights abuse against millions of people that was designed from the word go to destroy Black communities, destroy Hispanic communities, destroy activist communities. That was the point of it. And yes, they use it to go after poor whites as well. I know that many people like to say, oh, it's not about race, it's about class. And so they go after poor white people as well. That's true. They do arrest a lot of poor white people as well. Absolutely. But the difference is they're not arresting them because they're white people. Yes, there are a lot of poor white people that get locked up for a lot of things. And if you look at our prison systems, there's actually more poor white people in prison than there are poor Black people. However, percentage of the population wise, Black people are way overrepresented. So, there's a lot of ways to look at these numbers. I'm not saying this isn't also a class issue. It is. But at the moment, we're talking about the systemic racism of our policing system. And it doesn't matter how many of those police are Black people, are Hispanic. It doesn't matter because they have joined into a force. Literally, they use that term, right? Police force. They have signed up for a force that is systemically racist. And the only way they're going to get promoted or even really be able to stay on the job, whether they're Black or not, is to do exactly what that policing system does, to do as the police do. Okay, if you go in there and you say, hey, I'm Black and I would like to do the opposite of everything that this police force has been doing for the past 100 years, I don't think you're going to last a long time there. Okay, I think they're either going to make sure you get the worst assignments and never get promoted and never do anything. You sit in a booth somewhere and never do anything. Now, there may be some people out there that literally stood up, got put in some sort of security booth the rest of their careers and sat there staring at a wall for 12 hours a day. I knew someone like that. He didn't get put in the booth because he had stood up against anything. He just had the lowest job on the totem pole, which was literally staring out a window in a guard booth for like 12 hours straight without being allowed to look at anything else, which I don't know how you don't stab yourself through the cranium at that point. But anyway, so you join a force that is a racist force, a brutal force, a force that is designed to interrupt and to interrupt certain communities and also to cement the class structure, to make sure that those who are lower down don't stand up and fight back against those who are higher up, to to really just codify the status quo in a large way. That is what the policing system does. And that's how you have corporate criminals that commit crimes 1,000 times as bad as the low-level criminals, right? You have the big pharma killing hundreds of thousands with the opioid epidemic and killing hundreds of thousands in other ways. And you have big banks destroying people's lives by taking away houses or whatever, what have you, doing all kinds of awful shit. But our policing system has nothing to do with them, right? They're generally never arrested. In the rare moment they are, like Bernie Madoff, that's not done by your average police force, right? That's done by some FBI or some shit. That takes in the one guy who actually stole from fellow rich people, so they put him in prison because he was a rich person stealing from rich people. Anyway, but very rare. So the entirety of our police force, one of the largest armies in the world, the entirety of our police force is mainly arresting lower class, poor people. Occasionally they'll grab up a middle class person if they like, an upper middle class, if they like murder someone or something. But in general, it's poor people. And that's why all of these little crimes that you see, no loitering, no sleeping on benches, no speeding. But speeding, yes, they pull over everybody for speeding to some degree. But rich people just pay the fine and move on. It doesn't impact their life at all. Whereas if you're poor, and often if you're black and you get caught for speeding, then the charges can impact your life heavily. But on top of that, you often get arrested for other things. You were speeding, so now I'm going to go through every bit of your life and try and find a reason to arrest you. Anyway, but they don't get into any of that, right? He throws this little sentence out there about a lot of systemic problems, and then they move on.
Those systems just aren't working, and the systems, when people complain, those complaints aren't taken seriously and dismissed. There's a number of interesting anecdotes that were brought out, especially with regards to racism, specific, really troubling incidents that even the mayor and police officials acknowledged. And more broadly, this is about not individual incidents, but these broader patterns. And it's something that came out of the death of Rodney King when we first started seeing these investigations, and when the federal government got this power to investigate more broadly.
I love that he said, he mentioned the death of Rodney. Wait. Rodney King didn't die, right? Did he say the death of Rodney King? Rodney King was just beaten horribly. Anyway, he says what came out of the Rodney King incident is that blah, blah, blah. But that was in the 90s. And what has changed? Are our police less brutal now? Are our police killing fewer people? No, they're killing way more people. So he's bringing this up as an example of like, after Rodney King, there were some changes. No, nothing changed. Nothing.
Some of these patterns of discrimination. So this is something that we saw in Ferguson, in Baltimore, and a number of different cities. And it faded away during the Trump administration. But now it's really been coming back since Biden took back over, when they've taken these investigations seriously once again.
He says they weren't taken seriously under Trump, but now they're taken seriously. Now policing in America is just totally on lock. It's going great.
Jack, you spent a ton of time in the Minneapolis community in the wake of George Floyd's death.
Which, of course, last year was the most Americans ever killed by police was last year under Joe Biden. So this guy's full of shit. Yeah, it was just bad under Trump. But now people are really taking it seriously. No, the most people ever killed by cops was last year. And the numbers were given, 1,200. It's over 1,200 people killed by cops last year, which is more than any other country by far. And it's actually double that, because the Lancet Medical Journal did an extensive study and found that half of all police killings are not actually put down as murder by police. So therefore, half of them are not counted. So really, it's 2,400 people killed by police last year.
Does this day mean to that community?
It's validation for many people there. I mean, that's kind of the messaging that you're...
Okay, I might skip over his bullshit, because basically he's talking about how great this day is, that the Justice Department put out a report that doesn't change anything, that never changes anything, that comes 2 years after the fact. This is let's celebrate. Let's get out all the fireworks. This is tremendous. Bullshit.
You're getting from folks in Minneapolis, almost I told you so. This is not surprising to me. No problems here. And this report just adds to what we saw from a 2-year-long state investigation last year that was released that had similar instances that went through
I love that he mentions the 2-year-long state investigation that had similar. What's fucking changed in this country? Yeah, there might be small changes in little areas of Minneapolis. I don't know. I don't have the policing numbers on Minneapolis. Maybe there's been some slight positive changes in Minneapolis, very slight. But nationwide, they do this anytime there's a horrific, first of all, on video, that's key, horrific on video killing. They do a report 2 years later, it comes out, they make some slight changes, they fire a couple of dirty cops, and then they move on, and it's all basically the same. Maybe there's a bit of a downtick in murder by police. Well, that's setting a real high bar right there. That's setting a real high bar. And then the cops take that bar and they beat a peaceful activist with it.
700 hours of body camera video. So it's another sweeping condemnation of the culture of the Minneapolis Police Department, and one that you have the mayor, the new police chief, the new city.
It's another sweeping condemnation of the Minneapolis Police Department that will carefully be ignored. We will work very hard to ignore this report, as we did the last report. We have actually new processes in play to ignore these reports. We have new people. We've been hiring more people. We've had more funding who actively work on ways to ignore these reports. So we've really changed around here. We've really upped our game in terms of how exactly to ignore these reports. So thank you for another report that we will ignore more efficiently than we've ignored past reports.
Attorney, all saying they're looking at changing and that they find a priority to fixing.
So on the topic of change, you heard from the
all saying that they're looking at changing. How do these people take themselves seriously for like a second? They all have been working very hard on looking at changing. In fact, they have a committee who says they're going to look at changing things. And once they're done looking at changing things, they're actually going to give recommendations to another committee who will also have a look. There will be a whole lot of looking going on. At no point will we change anything.
City and the DOJ that they agreed to this, what is it specifically, a consent decree for police reform. So what specifically does that look like?
That's right. You know, we've seen this in a number of cities before where basically they're trying to cooperate. They're trying to get together, get everyone on the same page and get the...
We're trying to cooperate. We're trying to change things, but we just love killing innocent people. What can I say? Oh, we've tried so hard to fix things, but we just really like beating the shit out of innocent people, arresting them. It's such a good time. We're trying.
These reforms, because there are some more complex issues here, especially around morale. That's been a real problem for a lot of police departments, as well as this police department.
All right, this is where you get into the big Copaganda. This is the same guy who a minute ago said, oh, there seems to be a problem with the system. He threw that one in there. This is when it gets into big Copaganda. There's slight Copaganda, and then there's big Copaganda. This is the big Copaganda. We need to worry about police morale. We have one of the largest, most heavily funded, most heavily armed, most heavily steroided, most brutal police forces in the world in America. The largest number of people, the highest level of funding, the largest number of arrests, the largest number of people in prison in the world and ever in humanity. And yet the concern, as he goes on to say, and as the others agree with, is the police morale. Do they feel good about themselves? That's the real problem here. As they run around murdering more citizens in America, we've murdered more citizens. They murdered more citizens in America last year than Iceland will have murdered. Their cops will have murdered in 10,000 years. That's not an exaggeration. Iceland has had one killing by police in the entirety of its history since the 1940s when Iceland became its own country. One. In America, our police kill one person in the first 3 minutes after New Year's Eve of every year. And you know, I know Iceland is small, but still one in their history. Denmark often has years with 0 killings by police. Switzerland often has years with 0 killings by police. Britain has like 3 to 7 usually. I mean, we are in a league all our own, and it is a horror show of a league. And yet he's worried about whether the cops have enough confidence. because they've really been suffering with their confidence lately. They just, I mean, you guys probably see it right out on the street, all the cops walking by, and they're just kind of like, oh, shucks. They're always looking down at their shoes, just going, oh, man, I don't even want to be out here right now. What if someone makes fun of me, right? You notice that. They just can't look you in the eye. They're just always looking down, doing like this, scratching their heads, trying to cover up the fact that they're a police officer. It's really low morale. Yeah, they're not at all walking around like they're fucking paramilitary troops on our streets.
Department individually, just recruiting officers. I was on my bike ride over here today, even in MPD, I saw, a banner on the back of a bus for a $25,000 bonus for new officers. So a lot of cities are having
a problem recruiting. That's his next statement. There's a real problem with getting enough police. We have the largest police force in the fucking world. There's a problem getting police. Like, what are you talking about? And look, I have done large bits on police abolition. Of course, it is not just like tomorrow all police are gone. Have fun with that. It requires all kinds of steps, all kinds of changing in society, and how we move forward in that, and how we deal with that, and how we educate our society about community policing and that type of thing. It's a very different system. And of course, well, at least in my view of things, you'd still have, 12 guys with lots of big guns that would go deal with a person that looks like Schwarzenegger in Terminator and comes out with very large guns of his own. But that being said, and I did a long video on this, you could get rid of 99% of police and replace a lot of them with other things like just community watch people and things like that. Anyway, I know it sounds insane if you just give the 2-sentence version of it, but if you actually watched my 15-minute segment on it, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Anyway, my point is just like, even if, ignore police abolition for a moment, even if we're just saying that maybe the largest police force in the world, the most heavily funded and heavily armed, should decrease a little bit, you know what our problem is? Not police recruits. You know what problem this country does not have? Not having enough police. That is not a thing. All right, I think I want to skip to the next topic, dumb police morale.
Problems recruiting police officers these days. And I think that that's something that there's really a balance that the Justice Department is trying to strike. Vanita Gupta, who's the number 3 official at the Justice Department, has really been kind of at the center of this and trying to both implement reform, but also, keep up these relationships with law enforcement more broadly to make
still
sure
be their
that
friend.
The personnel are in place to just staff a lot of these police departments across the country and, deal with some of these deeper morale issues, and acknowledge in that report that, policing is a tough job.
Yeah, it is.
Policing is a tough job. More Copaganda. It's so tough. It's so tough. It's so tough to run around and insert yourselves into situations that, it might have been 2 people arguing. Oh my God. But you know what it wasn't? It wasn't a guy with a gun that might shoot somebody. It started off as 2 people arguing. Then you thrust the guy with the gun into it. And then all of a sudden he turns it into destroying someone's life. Now I understand not all of that is killing, but we don't see stats on the number of lives that were destroyed just by a cop arresting someone for having an argument. Oh, wait, now he's put in prison. Oh, something happens in prison where he has to defend himself. Now he's fighting in prison. Now he has time tacked on. Now he's there for 5 years. He doesn't see his children. It all just spirals out of control. And that's how our policing system works well. That's the stuff you don't see video of, right? It's just insanity. But here he is, just, look at that face. Look at it. Just really worried about these poor police and whether there's enough of them.
Is a tough job, and it's also become a challenge. Crime in some of the major American cities right now is a real issue we're going to hear about a lot over the course of the next minute.
And so then your host here, Meet the Press, whoever Haircut McHaircut is, he says, it is a really tough job. It's just a tough job for them to run around being this racist and murdering people. And we're going to hear a lot about the crime in America. Well, first of all, I've done segments, heavily researched segments, on how a lot of the crime in America has not actually been going up. That doesn't mean no crime exists, but it means a lot of it in varying ways has not been going up. We just heard more about it because it's become a trendy thing to be like, there's crime everywhere. We need more cops. It was basically a response by the status quo and the ruling elite to deal with the defund the police movement, was to say crime everywhere. Oh my God. So that's part of it. But even in the places where there is crime increasing, here's an idea. Maybe something causes that crime. Maybe it's in an incredibly unequal society that is collapsing in on itself because you have an incredibly wealthy cabal of assholes that are extracting all the resources, all the time, all the money, and leaving scraps for the bottom, so that rather than actually have an amount of money or an amount of comfort that could allow for a secure existence, we just get more dollar stores pumped into the communities. Dollar stores, dollar stores, dollar stores. And that's it. That's going to fix things. That'll make your life okay. Here's a fucking dollar store. Good luck with that. But no, we don't talk about that. We just say, oh, the answer to crime, police. Brutal police. All right, I want to move on to his next topic.
Congress to do more about a George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Nice to see both of you. Ryan, Jack, good to have you here in person. Still to come, exclusive new reporting on what was happening inside the White House in the crucial moments after the U.S. military shot down that Chinese spy balloon.
By the way, they're legally obligated to call it a Chinese spy balloon, even though there's still no evidence it was a spy balloon. And the U.S. has balloons, similar balloons up around the world that often drift across Latin America and everything else. And if China wants to spy on us, they'll do it with satellites. They don't need to use fucking balloons. And then the U.S. went nuts, and we went and shot down literally hobbyist balloons that cost $12 to put up. We shot them down with $1 million of Sidewinder missiles. I'm not kidding. Literally $12 balloons being shot down with $1 million Sidewinder missiles. And that's not overreaction at all. That's not a sociopathic form of behavior at all, right? That's just totally cool. Totally America showing our strength. And I'm sure there's been no other hobbyist balloons that have been in the sky at all since that moment. But because it was trendy to talk about the Chinese spy balloon, it made sense for Biden to show he was tough and shoot down hobby balloons around America. Total insanity. Anyway, but here's our mainstream media still acting like that was a thing. Yeah, ever since what was going on in the White House when that spy balloon got up there.
But first, we do want to know the passing of Daniel Ellsberg. He died today at the age of 92. Ellsberg, you'll remember, rocked the nation.
Okay, I'm gonna play in a second, but the key part of this. So they're talking about Daniel Ellsberg, and he's gonna repeat some of this, but amazing whistleblower, risked his entire life and his entire security, his family, everything to stand up and reveal the truth about Vietnam, which had been carefully studied but had not been released to the public. So he then released it in a major leak. Did have his life destroyed for a while. They went after him in every way they could. They tried to lock him up. Luckily, the courts ultimately sided with him, and he did not spend the rest of his life in prison, as they want to do to Snowden and Assange and so many others. But that being said, this guy was a hero. And watch when this guy, when Meet the Press gets to the part where they're summing up Daniel Ellsberg's life, his life. Watch which clip they play to sum up Daniel Ellsberg's life.
When, while serving as a U.S. military analyst, he photocopied thousands of pages of damning and secret government accounts of the Vietnam War, what became known as the Pentagon Papers, that he then leaked to the New York Times, exposing government lies about the conflict. Ellsberg appeared on Meet the Press in 1973, defending his decision to leak that report.
Because of our involvement in Vietnam and because of what has happened at Pentagon Papers and the Watergate case, a great many of our youth have lost faith in our institutions. Have you? You have 30 seconds.
I never did, and I'm glad to say right now I have never had more hope, not based on faith, but on evidence of what I see these days, that our government is functioning. Our government is not the president. Our government is not the executive branch. Those other branches of government are functioning to protect us from abuses by the executive branch, and they have never functioned better in our history.
That's it. That's now. Granted, I don't know what. I mean, you know, his view is his view. Ellsberg's view is Ellsberg's view. But of everything Ellsberg did, of everything he revealed, the horrible crimes of Vietnam, the horror show that was Vietnam, innocent people just obliterated left and right, including Americans. Americans drafted and sent over there to die for nothing. For nothing. And that's what Ellsberg was willing to risk his entire life revealing to the American public. And he did it. And it changed a lot of the course of history after those years. And what does Meet the Press decide is the clip that sums up Ellsberg's life? Is him saying that our government is working great. And he has a lot of faith in our government. Now, again, I'm not criticizing his views. He can have his opinion on whether our government was working great in 1973 or not. But my point is, of everything Daniel Ellsberg did and stood for, and by the way, even to his death the other day, he spoke out strongly for Julian Assange, for Chelsea Manning, for Edward Snowden, very strongly for other whistleblowers that have been attacked and vilified and persecuted and tortured by our government. He did all of that. And what is the clip that Meet the Press feels needs to be shown to sum up Ellsberg's life? Is Ellsberg saying, government is awesome. Everything's going right. Government looking good. She's a beaut. She's a beaut, Clark. That's what they showed. And so it's amazing that in this segment, which is 1 minute on the death of Daniel Ellsberg, they somehow managed to give a correct analysis of his life. The guy said he leaked thousands of documents showing the crimes of America in Vietnam. I don't know if they use the word crimes just then, but similar. And so they're correct on that. And you're like, okay, well, that's not so bad. And then let's sum it up with some propaganda about how our government is great. I mean, Jesus Christ. I'm surprised they didn't stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance at the end of this clip. Fuck you. Okay, I'm running out of time, but I want to show now a clip of the deputy director of the FBI being questioned in front of Congress and just being eviscerated. I mean, just made to look like a clown. And it shows what our FBI is and what they stand for. And it's just unbelievable to watch it. And the sad thing is the questioning is coming from a Republican, which is like, that actually says a lot about the Democrats. It says a lot about our country that now the rare person you find actually questioning the FBI and the CIA is a Republican. But anyway, I'm going to show that clip. This live stream is going to move to rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you're already watching on Rumble, everything stays the same. And my locals page, leecamp.net. Those are the two places this live stream will continue. So if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, all the others, then come on over to rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's completely free to watch over there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. So I hope I will